Do you sometimes find that a day of hiking is harder than you expected? I use these 3 simple rules of thumb to avoid that. With a little experience using them, you can minimize the surprises too. The first tip is calculating what I call the difficulty index. The arithmetic is easy enough. Divide total ascent by distance. As with a lot of simple concepts, the devil is in the details, like finding the elevation and distance in the first place. Let's understand the concept first. For the difficulty index, we care about total ascent, not net gain in elevation. We're not considering descents. And yes, I know descents can be hard and they can make hikes difficult. Think of this as a helpful heuristic rather than the whole story. Armed with this index, I compare it to my personal difficulty scale, given here in feet per mile and meters per kilometer. 0 is literally a walk in the park, well, unless it's steeply downhill, I guess. 200 feet per mile, about 40 meters per kilometer, is easy. 400 is comfortable. 600 is challenging. 800 is difficult. And 1,000 is extreme. Around 1,200, we're more climbing than hiking. These numbers tell me what's a reasonable distance for that day. From experience on the New England Trail, my limit is 25 miles at 124 feet per mile, 24 meters per kilometer. That's pushing it. On the Appalachian Trail, after I'm out there a while, my limit is about 20 miles at 400, and the higher the index, the fewer miles I can reasonably cover. On the John Muir Trail, I tried this method and I found it just didn't match my prior experience. Distances were harder to come by for the same difficulty index. It was the thinner air that made the difference, and I had to reset my expectations. I learned to cut back on the expected miles, but the numbers were still self-consistent within the hike. 400 feet per mile day was challenging enough to limit me to about 12 miles. I knew that if I was faced with 14 miles at 600 feet per mile, it just wasn't going to work. A more modest target campsite for that evening was in order. The lesson here is that this has to be calibrated for each hiker and the conditions. It also works for day hikes. Are you being too aggressive? Is your proposed day hike likely to leave you out after dark? How does this compare to last week's hike? These are all important planning questions. The index is most useful when you're dealing with a day-long stretch of trail where there will be ups and downs, but nothing really exceptional along the way. But even given that, here are some shorter trail stretches and their indices to give you a feel for the steepness associated with each level. For an easy stretch, there's the 10 miles from the Baxter State Park entrance on the Appalachian Trail to the ranger station at Katahdin Stream at 90 feet per mile. If that was a steady climb, you wouldn't even notice it. That's about 1 foot of gain over about every 60 feet. Of course, on real trails, there's ups and downs with steeper and gentler sections. Clingman's Dome in Tennessee, surprisingly, is a comfortable 401 for the approach from the south. If you aren't familiar, this is the highest point in the U.S. east of the Mississippi River and the highest point on the Appalachian Trail. The Priests, a mountain in Virginia, is more challenging at 677 over 4.2 miles. The final approach to Mount Washington from trail south is close to 900 for 1.4 miles. Mount Monadnock, a popular climb in New Hampshire, has an index of 1,233 on the steepest trail section I could find, the Red Spot Trail, but that's only for 0.6 of a mile, about a kilometer. Finally, Mount Katahdin on the AT has a similar 1,217 index for 4 times that distance. We can see the stretch on my far out display. From Katahdin Stream, not the campground, but further up the mountain, to the crest where the trail levels out, it's so steep I had to stow my poles. They were more a liability than an asset at that point. This brings us to those devilish details. How do we get ascent and mileage figures? Well, I use the Far Out application. I don't know much about other trail apps like All Trails or Gaia GPS. If you use these and know if they give ascent and distance information, please drop a comment telling us about it. Now, full disclosure, in 2025 I was a Far Out ambassador, something I committed to before I started this channel. That commitment has expired, and consistent with my channel's mission, I no longer participate in business-sponsored programs. With Far Out, if you're standing on the trail, you can simply tap your proposed endpoint, and it will tell you the feet of ascent, feet of descent, and the distance. Use the feet of ascent and divide by distance to get your index. But what if you're planning a day hike and you're not on the trail yet? Arriving at the trailhead is a bit late to find out that your hike is too much. Here's where some phone GPS magic comes in. I use an app called GPS Joystick on my Android. It allows me to tell my phone that I'm somewhere else. I can put myself at the trailhead and assuming it has a guide for that trail, use far out as if I'm really there. If you're an iPhone user or know of an app that can do this for those phones, please leave a comment about those options. Here's a screenshot of the New England Trail hike I mentioned before, taken as if I was sitting there instead of sitting in my office at home. That's tip number 1, the difficulty index. It takes time to understand your own calibration, but I found it to be incredibly valuable on my longer hikes. Tips 2 and 3 are versions of a single idea. They're applicable to multi-day hikes. They can be phrased like this. Tip 2 is, after a certain time of day, take the first viable campsite you come across. I use 2 hours before sunset to allow plenty of time to set up in daylight and make a decent supper. Finding a campsite may take time. You could end up with a lot less daylight than you expect. You can make judgment calls. If I know there's a campsite within a mile, I'll just head for the known campsite. This tip is an aid, not a shackle. It works well when you're facing the unknown. Tip 3. In an area with restricted camping, stop at a legal campsite if the next one can't be reached by, again, a certain time of day. For tip 3, I use 1 hour before sunset. In restricted camping areas, locations of legal campsites are generally well known and you need less margin for error. Last year, I stumbled into camp after dark, not because this tip failed me, but because I failed the tip. I misjudged the daylight and my distance capability. It doesn't mean I'm abandoning the tip or the tip was bad. I didn't apply it properly. A trick that works late in the day: hold your hand out at arm's length towards the sun so that the lower finger is just at the horizon. Each finger between the horizon and the sun is about 15 minutes of daylight. If you use both hands, you can judge remaining daylight for up to 2 hours before sunset. Here's something many hikers don't realize. Though the Appalachian Trail is entirely in the eastern time zone of the United States and has a generally north-south orientation, Springer Mountain is at 84 degrees west longitude, while Katahdin is at 69 degrees. That's the full width of the time zone. On October 15th, for example, sunset on Katahdin is a full 72 minutes earlier than on Springer. Knowing local sunset is important, especially if you're at a lower elevation surrounded by hills that may block daylight earlier in the evening. So I hope these tips will help you in planning your day and avoiding marginal circumstances. Give them a try the next time you're out on the trail. If you appreciate this content, please like, share, subscribe, and comment on this or other topics you'd like me to cover. And if you haven't seen this video yet, I recommend you take a look at it now. Thanks for watching.